Hey everyone, it's Monday, March 10th. I'm Benit Brach here in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Let's get to your top BC headlines this afternoon. We're going to start in Golden, where the Kicking Horse Mountain Resort says it's closed after an incident with a gondola this morning. This video appears to show a cabin that fell from the gondola's cable. Two witnesses tell CBC News that there were passengers in the cabin, but we haven't had any official word on if there are any injuries. The resort says an inspection is going on to determine what happened. And Premier David Eby says Americans can keep their watery beer. The province is now ordering to remove all American products from BC liquor store shelves. Now, last week, the store started pulling products from just red states. And the Premier says this next step comes after Trump threatened more tariffs targeting the dairy and lumber industries.
We're doing this for a couple of reasons. One is to respond to the escalating threats that we're seeing from the United States. The other is to recognize the feeling that many British Columbians have now when we look at American products, we don't even want to see them on the shelf anymore. It's a matter of strategy to go after Republican products, to target Republicans, the ones who are doing this to American families and Canadian families.
Eby says the decision was a difficult one, but he's urging British Columbians to enjoy Canadian booze. And it's also been a rocky past few days for the BC Conservatives. 3 MLAs have left the party. MLAs Jordan Keeley, Tara Armstrong, and Dallas Brody announced that they will now sit as independents in the legislature. They say they have decided to leave in solidarity with Dallas Brody. And this comes after Brody was kicked out over comments that she made on a podcast. Party leader John Rustad had described these comments as mocking the testimony of residential school survivors. But the 3 MLAs say Rustad is more interested in clinging to power than doing what's best.
No one was surprised when David Eby attacked Dallas Brody for telling the truth about Kamloops. But John Rustad's cowardly decision to stab her in the back revealed just how corrupt he has become. Jordan and I stood up for Dallas. John Rustad did not.
Rustad said it would have been ideal to keep everyone under the same tent, but the party will continue to focus on their key priorities, such as getting rid of SOGI, safe supply drugs, and the carbon tax. And let's go to federal politics. So Mark Carney has won the race to replace Justin Trudeau in a landslide victory. And Carney has now hinted at calling an election sooner rather than later. So how are people feeling about their federal party options? Well, we went to find out in NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's writing.
Justin Trudeau versus Jagmeet Singh, I probably would have leaned towards Jagmeet Singh. I think with Mark Carney in place, I lean slightly more Mark Carney.
It might be good to have a change, now that, we've heard a lot of complaint about, the former.
I'm usually an NDP voter, and it would sway me just because I don't want to split the vote.
So there isn't an exact date for when Carney could call an election, but hints from him suggest he may call one before Parliament is scheduled to return on March 24th. Okay, and you are updated. You're watching CBC News BC. Stay right here. BC Today is up next.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. A gondola incident in Golden has closed the Kicking Horse Canyon Resort today. We'll get you details on that up first. And a federal election may come soon after the Liberal Party chose Mark Carney as its leader. The Conservative and NDP leaders have spoken today as well. So who is best positioned to deal with Donald Trump? How do you feel about the state of politics right now? At 12:45, we'll meet a 14-year-old who is an award-winning magician. He'll join us with a few tricks up his sleeve. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. The Kicking Horse Mountain Resort in Golden is closed for the day after a gondola cabin detached from the Golden Eagle Express gondola. CBC's Karin Larsen is on this developing story. Hi, Karin.
Hi, Michelle.
What do we know so far?
Well, not a lot, really. This, according to the mountain resort, this incident, the gondola crashing to the ground, happened at 8:20 Pacific time, so 9:20 Mountain time. Golden's in the Mountain time zone. And they said emergency personnel were on the scene quickly. What we know really the most from is from a witness who was up there skiing for the day with his son. Apparently there was a big dump of powder, so the resort was very busy and there was a long lineup. So what the witnesses told us is that the gondola that crashed to the ground had just been loaded. We don't know how many people were aboard, and it had just departed the station heading up the hill. And that's when it came down to the ground. He said the crash distance fell about 3 meters. And he saw that personnel was on the scene trying to get the people out, but they were having a hard time getting the people out. And he didn't stay to see how many people were in there. The mountain hasn't said anything about passengers or if people are injured or not. We're still trying to find out that information. But it does seem like there were likely people aboard this gondola because there were long lineups to get on. And like I said, it had just departed heading up the hill.
Now, what have we heard from the resort or any other officials?
Right, that the resort has been closed for the day. The mountain is closed, that they are investigating. They do have mechanics coming on site, and I guess the company that built and knows more about this gondola. This is Kicking Horse is owned and operated by, I'm going to get this name wrong, it's Canadian Resorts of the Rockies, I believe is the company. So it also owns Fernie, Nakiska in Alberta, Mont Saint Anne in Quebec, and a few others as well. Mont Saint Anne had a gondola crash in 2023 as well, and that was investigated and found to be human error. So that's the company that owns this resort, and I hope we have our calls out. We're trying to find out more of exactly what's happened.
Okay, Resorts of the Canadian Rockies.
Thank you.
Is the name. You were very close.
Yeah.
We do have several reporters on this today and get you the latest update, of course, as soon as we get them. Karin Larsen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
That's the CBC's Karin Larsen, and more details coming on that story throughout the day here on CBC. It's 12:09 now Pacific time. This is BC Today. This morning, Premier David Eby announced BC will expand its ban on liquor products from red states or Republican voting states to all liquor from the U.S.
We're doing this for a couple of reasons. One is to respond to the escalating threats that we're seeing from the United States. The other is to recognize the feeling that many British Columbians have now when we look at American products. We don't even want to see them on the shelf anymore. It's a matter of strategy to go after Republican products, to target Republicans, the ones who are doing this to American families and Canadian families. But I have received many emails and letters and interactions with people who they don't even want to see American products right now in our government liquor stores. And so we're sending that strong message. We're responding to what British Columbians are asking for, and we are removing the remainder of the products. In addition, we'll be, in the coming days, introducing legislation to enable us to add tariffs to vehicles traveling from Washington State to Alaska. We'll be working with the federal government in supporting their continued tariff response against the Americans, as well as with premiers across the country, including to remove internal trade barriers to grow our economy. And we'll be accelerating projects here in BC to make sure we can stand on our own 2 feet and support families across the province whose jobs may be threatened by these actions of the American president.
That's Premier David Eby speaking this morning. And of course, we are covering the U.S.-Canada tariff war on an ongoing basis. Lots of emails have come into the show. We will take your emails throughout the day here, bctoday@cbc.ca. More on politics now. 3 former BC Conservative MLAs say they will sit as independents in the BC legislature. And that's after Vancouver Kilchenna MLA Dallas Brody was ejected last week from the Conservative caucus. BC Conservative leader John Rustad explained on the early edition this morning why he kicked Brody out of caucus.
Where I took issue is the fact that, it should have been mentioned about the fact that more than 4,000 children across this country that were that went to residential schools died and were not returned to their families and were buried on sites. Most often those were in cemeteries that were on reserves associated with with residential schools. And it's important to recognize that because of the pain and anguish and the suffering that many survivors went through.
That is Conservative leader John Rustad on the early edition this morning. He says Dallas Brody was ejected out of the Conservative caucus because of her podcast appearance that he said belittled and mocked residential school survivors. Joining those independent ranks are Peace River North MLA Jordan Keeley and Kelowna Lake County Coldstream MLA Tara Armstrong. They quit the caucus on Friday, and they held a press conference this morning in Victoria to say they have no immediate plans to form a new party, at least for now. And joining us now is CBC's provincial affairs reporter Katie DeRosa with more on this story now. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Michelle.
And so what have we heard today from Jordan Keeley and Tara Armstrong? Can you tell us what happened?
Well, this morning at 9 a.m., the 3 MLAs who are now out of the BC Conservative caucus, Dallas Brody, Tara Armstrong, and Jordan Keeley, held a press conference to, express their frustration with John Rustad and give reasons to why Jordan Keeley and Tara Armstrong decided to leave in solidarity with Dallas Brody. Jordan Keeley said the environment has become toxic, and even though John Rustad has insisted he allows free speech, they did not think that that was the case, and that individuals who, asked questions were vilified and bullied within the Conservative caucus group. We know that there was a Conservative caucus meeting on Thursday that erupted into shouting matches, and Dallas Brody left, and the other 2 MLAs followed her out. So that was really the fireworks that led to these expulsion and the 2 defections. And here's what Tara Armstrong had to say about John Rustad.
Jordan and I stood up for Dallas. John Rustad did not. He caved to the woke liberals that have now infiltrated his party.
And of course, the reference to that is the former BC Liberals turned BC United MLAs who joined the BC Conservatives when the BC United's election campaign folded. So the reference to that is that those more moderate centrists have now infiltrated the BC Conservatives and are watering down conservative values. And that's really the challenge that Rustad is facing going forward, is keeping together this big tent party of more social conservatives and more centrists.
So as we heard, they have no immediate plans to form a party, but what are their plans? Will that happen?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, because of Jordan Keeley's post on Friday saying that stay tuned, we'll be announcing a party. A lot of reporters thought they would be announcing their party. Dallas Brody said it's too early for that, but she did not rule that out. So for now, they will sit as independents. But Jordan Keeley was pretty firm in saying if any other conservatives want to join us, come on over. So there may be more who defect. We know that there were 5 BC Conservative MLAs who refused to vote to condemn Trump and his tariffs, and David Eby made that a NDP attack line. And there were 13 Conservative MLAs who signed a letter condemning Eleanor Sturko. That was sort of the first indication of division. So we don't know if more will cross over, but it's possible.
And these were questions that were being asked among reporters ahead of their convention just over a week ago. But it seems that went smoothly, or the party was unscathed. But now 3 fewer MLAs, as you say, don't know about any more who plan to leave. So where do these current defections at 3 leave the party now?
Well, yeah, going into the Conservative AGM, lots of people were asking Rustad about these divisions, saying that, there were board members who were challenging the Rustad slate for control of the party. And a lot of those are, again, on the social conservative side. But it seemed like from the convention, those were a pretty small minority, maybe about 10%. But it seems like this group is still organizing and trying to get its message heard. And, interestingly, we have to remember there were long-standing MLAs like Dan Davies in Peace River North, who was replaced by Jordan Keeley, and as well as Mike Bernier, long-time MLAs with BC Liberals / BC United who were dropped. And, perhaps Rustad is kicking himself for not going with some of those more established MLAs and taking a chance on these MLAs who ended up leaving the party and now could create more problems for him.
Katie, thank you very much. I know you're on this for today. We'll look to see what more comes of this story. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Katie DeRosa is CBC's provincial affairs reporter. And in federal politics, we are off to a busy week. The federal Liberals have wrapped up their first caucus meeting today with Mark Carney as party leader. He won in a landslide victory yesterday, claiming nearly 86% of the vote in the Liberal leadership race.
We'll work day and night with one purpose, which is to build a stronger Canada for everyone. And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form. We didn't ask for this fight, but Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
Well, we're asking you, what do you think about the state of politics in BC, in Canada right now, and where do you think they need to go next? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining me now is Hamish Telford, political scientist at the University of the Fraser Valley. Hi, Hamish.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Lots going on today.
There sure is a lot to catch up on. Why don't we start with the Liberal leadership race? What do you make of this outcome? Mark Carney really winning in a landslide, and what it means for an election in Canada.
I had every reason to believe, as it did everyone else, that Mark Carney was going to win this. I didn't anticipate that he would win so big, right? Everyone was saying throughout the leadership race there were 2 front runners. Well, there was only one front runner in the end, and that was Mark Carney, who won convincingly, humiliating defeat really for Chrystia Freeland. The Liberal Party showed her no love or loyalty for all of her hard work over the last 10 years in the Liberal government. But this does set Mark Carney up well to take over the helm of the party. And presumably have a fairly seamless transition into the Prime Minister's chair.
When do you think an election might happen?
I think what we're going to see is the transition of power this week. By the end of the week, Mark Carney should be Prime Minister and has a new government sworn in. And then I would think towards the end of next week, he'll go back to the Governor General and ask her to dissolve Parliament for the election.
Okay. And we have heard today from the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, from the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, as well. The question is, I guess, going to be who can deal with Donald Trump. So what will that mean for this election then, I guess? Is that going to be the defining question, the defining theme of this election?
I think it is, although the Conservatives still have one foot stuck in last year. Last year it was all about Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax, and now they're trying to argue that, well, Mark Carney is really just like Justin Trudeau. They still want to have a carbon tax election. They are trying to connect Mark Carney to Justin Trudeau's economic policies and the trouble that we're having in our economy today, while at the same time sort of are fighting against Donald Trump. I'm not sure that Canadians are really that concerned about the carbon tax anymore. There are bigger problems, and that bigger problem is Donald Trump. So I really do think it comes down to who's best able to manage him. And we know that Pierre Poilievre can whip up a crowd. He can rile up people very, very effectively.
He had a rally yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, and that has worked for him to date. That's not Mr. Carney's style, and so Canadians are going to be seeing two very distinct styles here. Do we want someone who can whip up a crowd, or do we want cool, calm, and collected in this particular moment?
Poilievre seems to be focusing his criticism as well on Mark Carney's record as a business person or as a finance person and what he's done with his businesses vis-a-vis Canada and the United States. Let's have a listen to what he had to say this morning.
Trying to hide from his record over the last 5 years of advising Trudeau in favor of raising carbon taxes, money printing inflation, and blocking resource projects, all while he moved his company headquarters and jobs to the United States. You know, it's ironic. Mr. Carney is trying to distract from his many scandals and conflicts of interest, as well as his disastrous record as Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, by talking about Trump. He's the guy that sold out to Trump.
What should we know about Carney's record in private business and moving the headquarters of Brookfield from Canada to New York?
So as I understand it, Mark Carney was the chair of Brookfield's board of directors, and the company decided to relocate its headquarters. This would be a decision that would be made ultimately by that board. Mark Carney did recommend to the board and shareholders that this move take place. Now, I'm not sure how many jobs were relocated. Brookfield already had offices in New York, and they were moving the address of the head office to New York for stock market reasons, investment reasons, and there were business reasons why to do that. Now Mr. Carney is in politics, and all of the things that he has done in business are fair game in politics, and Canadians are going to have to make up their minds as to whether or not he was acting in the best interest of his company or if he did something against the interests of Canada.
Hamish, let me ask you what we're asking our audience as well. What does this say now? How would you assess the state of, let's stick with federal politics for now. What is the state of the political landscape today?
Well, Canada is now facing a huge economic challenge coming from the United States, and really, if we're going to take Donald Trump's words seriously, an existential crisis. He is threatening our sovereignty, our territorial integrity, as well as threatening to do us great economic harm. That is the question. And we have two very different kinds of leaders now, as well as, of course, Jagmeet Singh and Yves-François Blanchet leading their respective parties. In Pierre Poilievre, we have the quintessential populist politician, and in Mark Carney, we have a technocrat who's never been involved in elected politics before. And this is going to be a real test. Pierre Poilievre, an extremely effective and experienced campaigner going up against a political neophyte who presents a very different resume. And that's going to be what Canadians are judging. Which of these men and personalities and sort of resumes do they think will best work against Donald Trump and the threat that he presents to us? And I can't think of a bigger contrast in political leadership and political style than these two men.
How does that play out in BC? We have today BC Premier David Eby announcing he's going to expand that ban on red state liquor that he announced last week, expanded to all liquor from the United States. And as well, we have this kind of split in the Conservative Party. Right now, 3 Conservatives have left the caucus. The Conservative caucus say they will run independently. I wonder how that federal landscape trickles down to how BC politics are playing out.
Yes, and it works both ways. We have seen a united front in Canada, a Team Canada approach, and really going across different party lines. David Eby and Wab Kinew leading NDP governments. We have Liberal governments in New Brunswick and Newfoundland. We've got a Conservative government in Ontario, the Francois Legault government in Quebec, Conservative government in Nova Scotia, all united, but again, cracks, right? Saskatchewan and Alberta, led by Conservative leaders, have taken a somewhat different trajectory, different track, not as aggressive. And that's ironic, right? Scott Moe and Danielle Smith have been very aggressive against Justin Trudeau, and the comments I saw from Danielle Smith indicate that she's going to be very aggressive against Mark Carney as well. But I think this creates real challenges for Pierre Poilievre. There are cracks in the Conservative ranks between Alberta, Saskatchewan, and say Ontario and Nova Scotia. And I think that would spill over to BC. John Rustad has advocated an approach to the United States more in line with Danielle Smith and Scott Moe of Saskatchewan, whereas David Eby has taken one of the more aggressive positions vis-a-vis the United States. And so how the federal leaders navigate this will be interesting, and I think it's a particular challenge for Pierre Poilievre, given the divisions in the Conservative ranks.
We're asking our audience, what do you make of the state of politics right now in Canada and BC? Trent is on the line in Coquitlam. Hi, Trent. Hi, Trent. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so my thoughts really after September 11th attack in 2000, that George Bush stepped up and said, either you're with us or you're against us. And I got to say, I got to know federally, provincially, on a world stage, G20, G7, all of it, who's going to step up and ask Trump this very same question or paraphrase this into a question? Are you with us or are you against us? This is, we're up against, we're looking at the demise of democracy right now. He's consolidating power in a few corporations and very few people through these tariffs and the uncertainty to middle and small businesses not being paralyzed. It's just consolidating power. If you guys can't see this and you don't step up and start speaking out, you're all complicit in this.
That's the question you want to hear from leaders right now, Trent. Are you with us?
I want to know which one. I want to know which leader has the cojones to stand up to him and say, hey, are you with us or are you against us? Are you with the Western free democracy or are you against us?
Okay. Trent,
he certainly seems to be against us.
Trent, thank you very much for that. I'll just wrap up with U.S.-Canada relations with you, Hamish, then. Where does this leave that?
Well, I think a lot of world leaders have answered Trent's question already, and they have concluded that Donald Trump is not with the Western alliance that the United States has led for the last 80 years, that he sees the world in very different terms. And the Europeans are already starting to move in reaction to that. And Canada's stuck, right? We're on the same continent as the United States, and we don't have any other sort of natural allies on our borders with whom we can work. And not only are we sort of isolated here, we're caught between America on the south and Russia to our far north. And if Donald Trump is aligning himself more with Vladimir Putin and the Russians, Canada's really going to get squeezed here. So we desperately, desperately need friends. So I think that this is a secondary question that Canadians should be asking in the election, is not only who is best, which leader is best able to manage Donald Trump, which of these leaders is better able to build alliances and friendships with other like-minded countries that will help Canada through this time of crisis.
Hamish, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Michelle.
Good to talk to you again. Hamish Telford is a political scientist at the University of the Fraser Valley. We'll go to more of your calls and your emails as well, asking you, what do you think? How do you feel about the state of politics right now in Canada and in BC? Lots happening already on this on this Monday, coming out of a weekend of vote within the Liberal Party for a new leader as well. So following up on that and some news on the BC Conservative front, asking you, how do you feel about the state of politics in our province, our country? Taking your calls, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Hear more from you coming up after this CBC News Update with Amelia John.
Good afternoon. The Kicking Horse Ski Resort in Golden has closed its lifts today after a gondola fell from its cable. The resort says that at about 9:20, something happened with a cabin at the base of their Golden Eagle Express. It says safety teams immediately began evacuating passengers, and a full inspection is underway. The provincial government is removing more American products from liquor store shelves. The BC Liquor Distribution Branch had stopped purchasing American beer, wine and liquor and has removed existing stock from its shelves. Premier David Eby says the government is expanding the list of targeted U.S. products in the face of ongoing tariff threats. And former BC Conservative MLAs Jordan Keeley, Dallas Brody and Tara Armstrong will sit as independents in the legislature. They left the party after Brody was forced out for her comments about residential school survivors. There had been speculation they'd form a new party. And now the BC forecast. On the north coast today, rain and wind, high of 7 degrees. In the Peace, mainly sunny, bit of wind, highs around 2. In the central interior, including Prince George, cloudy this afternoon, chance of rain or flurries, windy and a high of 5. Highs around 9 with a mix of sun and cloud in the West Kootenay, high around 10 in the East Kootenay. In the southern interior, increasing cloud, bit windy as well, high of 10. And for the south coast, chance of showers, highs around 8. And that is your CBC News from Vancouver.
Amelia, thank you.
Thank you.
Busy day already. Yeah. As Amelia John in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. We're asking you, how do you feel about the state of politics in Canada and BC at the moment? The Liberal Party has just chosen its new leader in Mark Carney. Meanwhile, here in BC, 2 Conservative MLAs have defected from the party following the ousting of Dallas Brody, the Vancouver Kilchenna MLA. Well, what do you make of these developments and what they mean for politics in BC and in Canada right now? A couple of emails here. Gord writes, after the ubiquitous extended media coverage of the outgoing head of the Liberal Party and his replacement, can we please be allowed to take a few breaths before we are again flooded with yet more coverage of the Liberals before an election is finally called? The exiting Liberal leader shamelessly manipulated the use of prorogation for the benefit of his own party. Canadian voters should reflect on the dismal decade of Liberal government before jumping on the salvaged Liberal bandwagon, no matter who may be the driver. And we have an email from Maureen in Nanaimo with regards to BC politics, saying it hit a new low today. Maureen writes, I can't recall the last time I felt this shaken writing an email. British Columbians should be appalled at the behavior and subsequent actions of ousted BC Conservative MLA, Dallas Brody. This is truly bottom feeder politics, the lowest I think we've witnessed an MLA sink in some time. Ms. Brody's choice to politicize the pain of an entire community is simply inhumane and, in my opinion, an act of emotional and psychological violence against Indigenous people. I hope she is voted out by her constituents and faces appropriate consequences for the disgusting, opportunistic act. That coming from Maureen in Nanaimo. We're taking your thoughts, BC Today at cbc.ca. Your calls as well. What do you make of the state of politics right now? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. I know Doug has been waiting a while in Salmon Arm. Doug, thanks so much.
Hi there. How's your day going?
Just fine. Very busy already. What are your thoughts on politics?
So I think, unfortunately, politics, both provincially and federally, has become very, very divisive. I don't think people can actually have a true political conversation because, right? Like, if I say, oh, I'm this or you're that, I think we get our defenses up right away, and we're not willing to take the time to sort of kind of look at the different perspectives. And I think, I think partly it's because of social media that we're talking to our own kind. I think generally we have a distrust of everything now, which is really sad. And I think just there's a lack of respect, right? Like I remember about 6 months or so ago, Matt Galloway from the Karin interviewed at Broadbent, and he said, like when he was in the House of Commons, he would do his thing as the NDP leader, right? But at the end of the day, he and Brian Mulroney or John Turner would all go out for a beer. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any of our leaders, provincially or federally, really doing that anymore because they don't like each other and they don't respect each other.
How does that affect policy, do you think?
I think they're the ones who said it, and then it trickles into our society, right? So, for example, I'm going to use Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre hates Justin Trudeau. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's vitriol, and it comes through the phone, it comes through the TV, it comes through every single piece of media. And if you have a leader who hates the other person, you're going to pick up on it. And there's no willingness to work, or vice versa. Justin Trudeau hated Pierre Poilievre, right? And so if Justin Trudeau says we're going to do this, screw what the other guy has to say. There's no give and take. Whereas, 25, 30 years ago, I think there was a little more give and take.
Doug, that's quite the observation. Thank you so much for that. It's a reminder about that common ground, I guess, that was more prominent and more evident years ago. Thanks so much for the call. That's Doug in Salmon Arm. Thanks for waiting as well. And our next caller now is Ben in Fort St. John. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the state of politics right now in Canada and BC?
Well, it's certainly going to be interesting at the national level. The results yesterday, I think, are a clear indication that the Liberal Party is going to move away from its activist roots more to the center and become more of a technocratic party. And I think that you'll see that reflected in the smaller cabinet that Mark Carney assembles prior to the election.
And what direction do you think the politics should go in then?
Well, it's going to be really interesting because you're going to have two very different leaders. You're going to have a pragmatic, fact-based, focused attempt by the Liberals that aren't going to wade. I don't think it wouldn't be to their benefit to wade into the political weeds and the quagmire that the Conservatives are ready to wade into. It's kind of ironic that, Pierre Poilievre had a really easy time of defining Trudeau and his government over the past couple of years. And the Liberals really had trouble trying to define Poilievre. But Poilievre has actually done a really good job of defining himself as basically being an attack dog and a sloganeer. And now that he has to change course, I don't think Canadians are going to buy it. So it's going to set up a really interesting quagmire, I think, for Poilievre. How does he attack this? Does he continue to try to tie Carney to the previous federal government, or does he actually start acting prime ministerial and coming up with plans? And not only that, showing who his team is going to be. We have no idea who the Conservative team is going to be to help us attack Trump. All we know is him. That's it.
Ben, thank you so much for the call from Fort St. John and on BC's announcement that it's expanding the ban on liquor to all U.S. liquor. Dana writes, I'd like to say I fully support David Eby in his move to remove all American liquor from our provincial liquor stores. I was ready to write my MP about this very issue. This isn't about punishing Americans or targeting red states versus blue states, nor should it be. For me, as a BC climate activist, I'm very concerned about the livelihoods of farmers in the Okanagan who have suffered major crop losses in recent years due to freeze or fire, and think we can use this opportunity to reroute our dollars back to these Okanagan farmers and winemakers and support them while keeping our money in BC and Canada. We have power with our dollars. Let's use it to not only react to Trump, but to be proactive in taking care of our fellow Canadians vulnerable to a changing climate. Dana, thank you for the call. Sherry is our next caller now in Kamloops. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about the state of politics right now, Sherry?
Well, it's certainly been anxiety producing since Trump's been in power. I think we have to really pay attention to what the politicians are doing and what they've said versus sort of the way Poilievre has changed his mind a bit on being linked to Trump. He's saying he's not MAGA, but everything indicates he is, and we really need to take people at their word. I get that people want to vote Conservative for more fiscal responsibility, even though that's a bit of a misnomer. It's not really Liberals spending more. Traditionally, it's Conservatives. But we have to look at the whole picture. Do we want to be taken over by the U.S. or by Russia? And if we do, then vote for Poilievre. If we don't, which I hope most Canadians don't, then pay attention to what he's actually doing and saying rather than his more recent words.
Sherry, thank you. And our final caller on this is Max at Parksville. Hi, Max.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm fine. What are your thoughts on the state of politics right now? A lot happening this week.
No doubt. No, it's unfortunate. It's something that I've extensively wrote about for years, 10 plus years, is that democracy itself, modern democracy, is basically stagnated. And what we're seeing right now is the human flaws that are dominating politics right now. And if we don't get mechanisms in place, legislations in place to correct the human flaws, such as we have in real life, like in a court of law, it's only going to get worse because people are more divided, politicians are more polarizing. It's only going to get worse. We can't have an honest conversation. In a court, as an example, we have such thing as perjury. So there's a mechanism there to try to push to have an honest conversation about things. We don't have such a thing in politics. Who's telling the truth? People are being manipulated. Sometimes the politicians are being honest. Sometimes they're lying. Sometimes they're exaggerating, right? Nobody knows what the truth is. You know, if we don't have, as another example, psychological screening, there's a lot of professions we need psychological screening before they take their position. Same as politicians. We have no psychological screening. We don't know who's who in these high positions that have, you know, real consequences on everybody's lives.
More checks and balances.
Don't have what's that?
More checks and balances for politicians.
Well, we do. Yeah. We have generally, like in society itself, we have laws to try to keep the peace. It's civil.
Max,
but what do we have in politics right now that pushes politicians to try to be honest, to have integrity?
More accountability.
You know,
Max, I'm sorry, you're cutting out there. It sounds like you have a call come in, but I take your point there in terms of politicians and what's needed to keep them accountable. Thank you very much for your call. bctoday@cbc.ca is our email address. Send us more of your thoughts on the state of politics right now. It is 12:43 at Pacific time. This is BC Today. Well, we know BC's forest industry is especially vulnerable as it faces a double whammy of tariffs and duties from the U.S. Industry experts are looking for ways to lessen the blow. One solution, they say, is increasing the use of softwood lumber in the construction market, including mass timber high-rises.
About mass timber is that it does cost more than wood frame traditionally built buildings, but there's a significant savings when it comes to the amount of time it takes to put them up because they're pre-manufactured floor pieces. We have a lot of wood product that comes from Canada, is processed in the US, and we get it back, but we also have the ability to use our own naturally sourced and naturally produced lumber, especially our mass timber comes from BC.
Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very nice to be with you this afternoon. Well, we are going to change course now and relax a little bit for this last 15 minutes of the program because we're going to meet someone who's pretty remarkable. Blake Aleong is 14 years old. Now, he started doing magic tricks at 6, and now he performs around the province, including at Vancouver Canucks games. He has performed at halftime at Rogers Arena, and yes, that magic wand is taking him places. He's also won awards, including the Vancouver Junior Close-Up Magician and Vancouver Comedy Magician of 2024. He's about to appear on Canada's Got Talent. Oh, and he does all this while studying at SFU. That's right, he's 14, you heard me right. So Blake joins me now here in our studio. Hello.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me on.
I am so glad to have you. So you're 14, you are already a university student,
Yes.
and you're a magician. So you're a wizard and a whiz kid.
Okay, you could say that. Thank you.
Okay, so tell me first about your studies. How did you get to be a first-year university student at 14 years old?
Well, I always found in elementary school and stuff that I didn't really fit into the classes. I wasn't as stimulated with those earlier classes, especially in grades 1, 2, 3. And then I tried out some higher level courses and I found that I fit in a lot more and I was more stimulated by the material.
Okay, and here you are now. Now, when were you first stimulated by magic? When did you encounter magic?
Well, I was 6 years old. My family and I were walking down the Las Vegas Strip, and a street magician, pulled a coin out of my ear, and I was really shocked at the time.
That moment, I feel like any child who has a coin pulled out of the back of their ear is just like this discovery of delight.
I know, it's crazy.
Okay, but I mean, okay, my kids have done magic for sure. You know, they've set up the table with a blanket and done little shows, but I mean, that's it, right? You've taken this and run with it. So how did that happen?
Well, it's all thanks to my amazing support system. Obviously, my parents are really supportive, and my mentor, Jeff McBride, he's awesome.
Okay, so tell me about the first trick. Do you remember the first trick that you did?
Yes, I think I went home and I tried to learn the coin from ear. I mean, and it's come full circle. Obviously, when you learn the secret, it's not as, you get a little bit disappointed, but I still love learning the secrets and I love being able to put joy and happiness on people's faces.
Why do you get disappointed?
Because sometimes the secrets are a lot more simple than what you think.
Right.
And sometimes they're really, really difficult.
Okay, so it kind of takes the magic out of magic.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
You see what's behind the scenes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So for you, how did it become, like, I guess you're working professionally. So how did that all come about?
Well, I've just been trying to perform as much as possible, get as much flight time as possible. And that's helped me out a lot because the more you get to perform, the more you see what works and what doesn't. And the more you get to refine that and put it into your show and then get, of course, an actual act that you can perform.
Wow. And what's flight time?
Flight time is performing experience. So I like to bug people at cafeterias on my team, my parents even. They're sick of magic by now, I'm sure.
Are you, Mark? Are you sick of magic? His dad is here as well. Well, I saw you perform at a fundraiser and
Yes.
I was blown away. You had this, you were funny in the moment, but yet also did your tricks so smoothly. So I think you have a trick for me right now.
Sure,
I'm a little nervous. Okay.
Don't be. I'm not going to make you disappear this time.
Okay. I had a magic trick prepared, but it disappeared. No, I'm joking.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll help you find it. I'll
Okay.
help you find it. This is a pack of playing cards. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a slit on both sides of the box. We're going to come back to that in a moment. But as I said, yes, this is a deck of playing cards. It's a tool for games. It's a tool for magic. It's even a tool to distract your relatives when they question your life choices. Now, I admire all the craftsmanship that's went into these decks of cards, all the colors, all the patterns, all that stuff. They're beautiful. I mean, I'm going to ask a question to the people at home. Have you all ever just sat there and wondered how a deck of cards is made? No?
I can say I have not, no.
Me neither, but for the sake of this show, let's just pretend that I do.
Sure.
Here's what we're going to do. Let's just give the deck a few cuts. Let's use this one. The 2 of spades. Is this a good card for you?
Sounds good. 2 of
Perfect.
spades.
Now hold your hand out flat for me. We're going to go back in time with a deck of playing cards. Obviously, you first start with a block of wood that's then beaten to a paper pulp. That paper pulp is then turned into cardstock, which is then printed on. We're going to go back in time with magic. Firstly, the printing. Turn over the card.
This was a 2 of spades.
Yes. Show the camera. It's completely blank. The ink disappears.
Where did it? What?
I know, but that doesn't just work on a single playing card. It actually works on the whole deck. Watch this closely. If I just give the deck a rub like this, it turns completely and totally blank.
It's all blank. Okay, I'm sorry, but 2 seconds ago, the red print was on, the red design. It was a diamond. It was like 8 of diamonds or something.
All the cards were printed.
Sorry, what happened?
I don't know either, but we're gonna go even further back in time. Now for this, we need something special. This is very cool. This is my magic wand. It's also known as a Sharpie marker. Have you seen one of them before?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take one card out of the deck. You can see the deck's still there, right?
Yeah, I see it. The deck is there.
One of the cards out. Going to close up the box. Now watch this. All we need to do is take the Sharpie and hit it against the deck a few times. What that does is it causes it to go back to a paper pulp. Okay. I know you don't believe me. I know you don't believe me, but trust me, watch. We can pass the card.
Sticking it through
right
the
through
box.
the deck, through the slit.
Okay.
That's impossible. See, that's because it's paper pulp. But Michelle, we're going to go back in time one last time. So hold your hand out flat.
Okay.
Put the other hand on top.
Okay.
Now watch this.
It's like a sandwich now.
Yes, it's a sandwich. A hand sandwich. Did you feel it happen? Maybe not.
Nothing.
But open up your hands and dump out what's inside the box. Check it out.
I feel scared.
It's a block of wood.
Oh my God, it's a block of wood. Okay, so this was the blank cards just a few moments ago. And you actually...
Now wood.
What?
I know. I don't know if it's American or Canadian wood, but I think we all know which one's better.
You know whose side you're on.
Yeah.
Okay, so a moment ago, this was blank pieces, blank cards.
Yeah.
You were actually able to somehow
push the cards right through.
A card right through as if it was just pulp.
Yes.
And now it is a hard block of wood.
That's called time travel.
I'm sitting right next to you. I didn't feel the time travel at all.
I know. It's really strange, isn't it?
I feel jet lag now, though. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Every day. We need some coffee.
Okay, so where does this go next?
Well, up to you. What do you want to do next?
Okay, so you've just taken us back basically to the very end, to the very start of the life cycle of a deck of cards.
This is the start of a life cycle of a deck of cards. It's just a tree until the companies come along and say, you know what we need? More gambling.
Yes, just what society needs more of.
Right.
That was amazing, Blake.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I'm still stuck on how that card was in my hand and ended up blank.
Me too.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't know. For those of you listening, I really did not see a thing. I just had the card in my hand, and next thing I knew, it was completely blank. That was awesome. Do you ever have a card or a trick kind of go wrong, or?
Yes, it does sometimes go wrong, and that's the fun part because you get to improvise and try to come up with new routes to the final destination.
Wow.
I almost see it like a hiccup. When you're driving, if there's a closure on a road, you just have to find a detour and a way to go around so that you still get to the final destination.
But all at the same time, putting on a smile and a brave face for the audience.
Wow, I don't know about that. Sometimes it's a little bit hard, but yeah.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, how do you feel? Don't you feel pressure in that moment?
Oh, yes, a lot. It's pretty scary, especially when you're on big stages because there's a lot of pressure for the tricks to go right. And at the same time, there's a lot of sleight of hand and stuff that you have to be able to do whilst keeping up a presentation.
Do you have any role models? Like who's a magician you look up to?
Yes, there are a lot of role models for me, especially my mentor, Jeff McBride, he also mentored Matt Franco.
I have seen Matt Franco perform.
Yes, he's wonderful.
He won
AGT, yeah.
America's Got Talent.
Yes.
He's a big deal.
He is a big deal. He's awesome.
What do you learn from them?
Well, not just techniques. Obviously, there's sleight of hand, there's moves and different manipulation techniques, but also a way to take your magic to the next level is by focusing on presentation and focusing on how the audience perceives it so that you can do things that fly right by them.
Okay, I think you have a quick one for us to close.
Sure, I have a quick one for you, but I need everybody at home to watch closely because I have a watch here.
Okay.
I have it set to a very specific time. I'm going to, here, hold your hand out flat, put the other hand on top. Now, don't turn over the watch. I want you to think of any time of the day, okay? It could be like 8:45. It could be 7.
I have 1 minute left, okay.
Do you have one in mind already?
I do, yes.
Perfect. What is it?
1:30.
1:30. I didn't tell you to choose that time, did I?
You just said choose a time.
Turn over the watch. Show everybody.
Oh, my God. Why does it say 1:30? You're freaking me out. It says 1:30 on this watch.
And that was fair. Nobody else knew what time you were thinking of.
No. How do you do it, Blake?
That is impossible.
Okay, I get why you're doing so well. Thank you very much.
Thank you
That
so
was
much for
amazing.
having me on.
Blake Aleong is 14 and a professional magician. You can find more information on him at BlakeAleong.com. That was amazing.
Thank you.
1:30 it says.